Hello and welcome to the International Pentagon Challenge. My name is Kyanite and together we'll be embarking on a very special Football Manager journey where we'll aim to try and win every major international competition in all 5 continents, forcing our hand to play with hundreds of different types of players and most importantly hopefully create loads of awesome different types of tactics along the way. Once that's complete, only then are we allowed to set our sights on the biggest of all goals, the FIFA World Cup. How many nations will we have to manage until we work our way to the top? How many dodgy names will we have to pronounce along the way? So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hopefully we're going to have a lot of fun along the way. Alright, hello everyone and welcome to episode 3 of the FM18 International Pentagon Challenge. Now, just a heads up, we're not actually going to play a game in this episode. Our first game on camera is going to be in the next episode. This episode, I think given the fact that the last episode was about a year ago, it is really important, right, that we take a look at what has actually gone on in that period of a year and take a look at what I, at the moment, currently consider our strongest team, the tactical approach, the rough tactical approach, obviously, that we're going to take into games because we are going to have to tweak a lot. And we'll also see how we got on in our first friendly match against Kenya just under 2 months ago. So I think first of all let's take a cheeky look at what is to come. So I think we've been quite unlucky in the CAF Under-23 Championship qualifier, the African Cup of Nations Under-23 qualifier. We've been drawn against Egypt, which is going to be an incredibly tough one. I'm not quite sure how the seeding works, but you'd think that countries like Egypt and DR Congo wouldn't get drawn against each other because both Egypt and the DR Congo are probably amongst the strongest football teams in Africa. So if we beat them or they beat us, that's it, we're knocked out. We can no longer qualify for the African Cup of Nations, which is, it seems ridiculous in my opinion. But the reason why I say we've been incredibly unlucky is because we've been drawn against Egypt. And Egypt are obviously a very good team. Another part of our issues, I mean, the fact that they've got a guy, their best player is apparently called Karim Nedved. Nedved? Bloody hell. Nedved. What? So we can compare values of players. So if we compare our rough squad, obviously our better player, Luke Bacchio, is worth 4.6 mil, and we have a fair decent number of players worth over 100 grand, whilst their better player, or best player from what I can see at the moment in their under-23 side, is Karim Nedved at 48.5k. Meanwhile, the rest of the under-23 lads are actually pretty young as well, so hopefully, as far as the under-23 teams are concerned, I think we should really, on paper, have a much stronger side than Egypt. The only issue is you can't always judge simply by value because these are quite young players, so we should have the mental advantage to an extent because we've got a fair number of 21 and 20-year-olds. And the reason why I've obviously gone for that approach is because I just want to win and get a normal job. I'm not here to build for the future or anything like that. And the fact that most of the Egyptian players play for teams in Egypt, right? And obviously when you play for teams in Egypt, you're either not that good in comparison to our players, or they are very good players in terms of like being sick regens. However, they've not actually been found yet, hence why they're on very low values because their contract isn't worth too much. Now, you've probably noticed that I've clicked on quite a few players up until this point and we know absolutely nothing about them. Going into this game, to be brutally honest, the only thing I know about the under-23 squad is that this is how they lined up the last time they played, and they're going to be playing a 3-5-2 more than likely. Watch them play a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 when we end up facing them. So this formation is what I've theoretically been preparing for. Now the tactic we're going to take a look at in a few minutes time, which I kind of built, which is what I won't say consider our strongest tactic, but it's kind of the approach I think gets the best out of our players. But obviously, depending on the opposition we're playing against, we will tweak things as we go along. But generally speaking, I do feel like our core kind of way of playing that you'll see kind of suits playing up against this kind of 3-5-2 formation. The only main thing we've kind of got to worry about is the fact that they are playing with 2 strikers. So 3-5-2, we're probably going to try and take advantage of wings, obviously. But the thing is, realistically speaking, we should know something about these players. And even though I have 2 scouts, so like I managed to hire 2 scouts, and this is like the thing about international management on Football Manager. International management on Football Manager is bad enough, and then you go into the under-23s and you get neglected even more, and it's just mind-blowing. So I have 2 scouts, but I can't actually give them assignments. I'm not sure if assignments are only a thing like during the international break. Now, obviously, I know it doesn't help that like one of my scouts is also a striker at a club somewhere, but even my full-time scout, Lumbala Sila, obviously I made sure that they were from the the Democratic Republic of Congo, because they'd have a decent knowledge in the area, which is really all we're fussed about at the moment. And yeah, I don't know how to basically tell him to go and scout the Egyptian under-23s for me, and I can't really view, or can I? If I go, yeah, so the last time they played was in September of last year, and they won 5-0. That is basically all I know, and I know that this guy scored a heck of a load of goals, and he's 17 years of age. So we're going to, well, got a hat-trick, so we are going to have to be careful of him. But then again, Cape Verde are no Democratic Republic of Congo. So that's all we know about him, and it's kind of frustrating, because I want to be able to scout the opposition. I want to be able to tweak before going into the game. And obviously, I want to tweak whilst I'm in the game, but obviously it's kind of helpful if you know some information prior to going into the game. So that gets me on to my other point. It's been impossible for me to hire my own assistant manager. Like, I'm not that fussed, but I think it would be helpful for me to have an assistant manager, because he'd probably give me reports of some sort, and he'd be an extra kind of scout. I'm not really too bothered about under-23 coaches, because I barely spend time with them anyways to coach them. So, yeah, I'm not really too bothered about that. Plus, I think the under-20 manager and coach get involved if I do need coaches for some reason. But obviously, as we can see on the left-hand side, both dynamics and training for some reason aren't really a thing, which I think they used to be in previous versions of Football Manager. They could be for senior squads, but we've got to build our way up. So, let's take a look at our team and take a look at our kind of main tactical approach. Now, this is kind of like a scaffolding for how I think we'll be at our strongest going forwards, but you'll see when we see the Kenyan highlights, the tweaks I made based on opposition. And the thing is, international management is very different to team management or squad management or club management. That's the word I'm looking for. So, honestly, your players are never going to have decent familiarity. So there's not too much point trying to emphasise on getting them training the 3 tactics, try and increase familiarity and whatnot. Honestly, I feel like our current approach, being an under-23 manager, like if you're a normal international manager, you probably have more friendlies and stuff to get the players familiar with how you want to play. But in our case, there's obviously not much point. So all our tactic is kind of a main approach that we're going to take and tweak as we go into different games. So let's take a look at some of our players. This is probably what I would consider, on paper, our best starting 11, and we've got Boris Lumanza in goal. Actually has some decent stats, 18 years of age, plays for TP Molung, obviously one of the better teams in the Congoan top league. Okay, and it's a shame he's got 17 eccentricity. It's not necessarily a bad thing. 13 reflexes, and he's pretty decent across the board. I think what's disappointing is the fact that he's on £2 a week. So this is actually a really good shout for some people that might be watching this and do regular Football Manager club management. Honestly, you can always find decent regens if you go to decent countries and take a look at their youth international squads. That's something I always do, and you always find some like decent gems. And if you're a big team, you can scout players quickly. You always find gems like this. Like if you're a championship team or something like that, or maybe not championship team, but maybe like League One level or whatever, this kid costs £325, is on £2 a week. So like obviously you'd probably struggle to get a work permit for him, but like let's say you're managing a team in France, for example. This guy probably already speaks French, because that's what they speak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And, you know, he's a pretty decent player. So, okay, so next up, right back, we've got Gideon Kalulu. That's going to be a name I'm going to enjoy. He actually plays for Lyon, which really says a lot about him. On paper, he's actually not too bad for this level. So, obviously, strength and jumping reach could be a little bit better. And on paper, he's a centre-back, but it kind of explains why he's playing right-back, right? Because he's not that good in the air. So I initially had him positioned to be one of our main centre-backs, but when I realised we had other options, I basically put him at right-back. One thing we really lack going forward is fullbacks that can cross the ball. So obviously our tactics will be tweaked, or have been tweaked, to reflect that. 12 marking, 12 tackling, 12 positioning. For this level, not really too bad, and he's got decent mental stats for his age too, which is really what we're looking for going into this important game, well, 2 legs against Egypt. Next up, John Njate. I think that's how you pronounce it, plays for Midtjylland. So only on 100 quid a week, but physically not too shabby either, slightly better in the air and whatnot. 12 heading, 13 marking, 13 tackling. And one thing to bear in mind as well, so when players are really young, so like you think 18, 19, 20, you know, sometimes you can get some sick players at them ages. Chances are, if they really are that good, then they'll be playing for the main Congo team. And that actually happened to one of our players who's actually left back right now, Mark Bowler. This guy didn't actually play for us against Kenya in our friendly because he got called up to the main side. Now he's been dropped from the main side, so I brought him back to the under-23s. And that's just something worth mentioning, that when you're an under-23 manager, you are always fighting for players and whatnot. Stone Mambo. That's a name and a half. Stone Mambo. Obviously left-footed, so he's our left defensive centre-back. 12 heading, 12 marking, 12 tackling, 11 positioning, 13 strength, 12 jumping reach, 11 determination. Again, can't complain. On loan from Troyes, plays in Ligue 2. So, you know, these are players that are playing at a half-decent level. Bolo, we've obviously already seen on loan from Norwich. So, again, he's currently playing in League 2 for Leyton Orient, but he's a Norwich man. Product of the Arsenal Youth Academy, which pretty much on paper explains why he is very, very decent. He likes to run with the ball down the left-hand side, but only has 10 crossing. So I feel like we can utilise his pace and acceleration against certain oppositions. But I wouldn't really want him to be playing as a wing-back or attacking full-back or anything like that. I'd really want him more as a dummy runner, just to try and distract opposition defences because of the sheer amount of pace that he has. Decent work rate as well, in case we want him to do that kind of role, so like wing-back role, and decent stamina as well. And I say decent stamina, again, within context of this level. Next up, Rui Kangas. So we've got a pretty strong core in the middle of the park, and again, this formation is simply based on the fact that you look at some of our players, one thing we're pretty good at doing is running pretty fast, so it seemed like a no-brainer to play more of a 4-3-3. It's just a shame that we don't really have a big man in the middle of the park to really, you know, head crosses in, but we also have some decent central midfield players. So we've got Glo Rotikinga, who also plays for Midtjylland, 650k a week. Decent physically once again, which is something I always like with my players. 12 tackling, 10 marking, 9 work rate, off the ball, 10 position, So he's a defensive midfielder on paper. Now, I normally like my defensive midfielders to kind of be anchormen or ball winners. And this guy, like, he kind of seems like a jack of all trades, master of none. So I feel like we'll probably change his role depending on the strength of the opposition we're playing against. So if we're playing against a better side, I'll try and utilise his 12 tackling a little bit more and be less fussed about him getting caught out of position and play him as a ball-winning midfielder. If we're playing against strong opposition, maybe like Egypt, I'm not quite sure what he's going to be playing as yet because I've not really thought about it. Probably play him as a slightly more static anchorman or defensive midfielder. Again, if we end up playing against a team where it feels like the fullbacks should be pushing forward as wingbacks, as dummy runners, for whatever reason, we might want the wingers to cut inside, then again, it makes more sense to play him as a halfback and whatnot. So really, we don't have that many players that can actually play defensive midfield, but I like having a defensive midfielder when you're putting emphasis on wingers to utilise their pace far up the pitch, because it just gives you that defensive stability. Next up, Luzayadio Bangu, right? Bangu, contracted to Fiorentina in Serie A, which says a lot. On paper, this guy is basically levels above some of our other players. Decent physically, technically very good across the board. Now, on paper, you'd think, well, 14 vision, 14 passing, advanced playmaker. But the thing is, I feel like he can do more than just playmake. So for that reason, it just made sense to stick him in the middle of the park. We knew we wanted him to play. I wanted him to kind of be that all-round central midfielder, and that's what we've gone for. Next up, we needed someone. Now, I was kind of contemplating playing a 4-2-3-1, and again, like, the tactic I've gone with is really based on the players that we had at our disposal, and one thing I noticed was that we have a lot of central midfielders who can also play as attacking central midfielders, and what most of them had in common that Bangu was the standout player for was that they were kind of playmaker-y style of players. So I was contemplating kind of maybe going with a 4-2-3-1, but for now we've gone with more of this approach because I don't want to, you know, bite off more than I can chew when I've not really gotten to know my players just yet. And I find that this approach is a little bit more conservative and we can hold onto the ball a little bit better. But that's why I also went for attacking because, to be honest, a lot of the time going forwards, he ends up running into that area anyways. So it does end up looking like a 4-2-3-1. Joe Kobo plays for Sian, Stade Malherbe Sian, I think is how you pronounce it, in Ligue 1. So again, decent player. Now, obviously, when I say he plays in Ligue 1, he's not like a main player for them. He'll be a youth player. But the fact that, obviously, he plays in France means that he's probably going to be better than most of the players that still play in the Congo First Division, right? So, yeah, 14 vision, 11 passing, 14 technique on paper. Again, Bangu is probably a better playmaker, but I feel like Bangu playing a little bit further back, we can utilise more of his defensive attributes alongside Rutikanga as well. Next up, we've got Luke Bacchio. Now, you know this guy's good because he's got a bloody photo. This guy is very, very good, and I mean it very, very good. Valued at 4.6 million quid, and initially you might think, oh, well, why don't you really play him up front? And for me, I feel like this guy is kind of like the Cristiano Ronaldo of our side. We want him close to the midfield, that way we can get the ball to him a lot more. Very, very fast. 15 acceleration, 16 pace, 15 dribbling, this is all really quite phenomenal, and 14 crossing, which really means we can play him either as an inside forward on the left and get him shooting. It's just a shame his finishing and composure are quite poor. Or when we feel like we need to go a little bit more direct, use him out on the left. He'll blitz past pretty much every under-23 we'll probably face in Africa. And 14 crossing means that whatever ball he ends up putting into the box will probably be pretty damn decent. So we'll take a look more at Luke Bacchio in a bit. On the other side, Albert Sambi Lokonga, 20 years old apparently, looks about 12, but on paper, technical attributes kind of stand out. 14 dribbling, 12 crossing, 12 corners, 15 first touch. It's just a shame that physically, as well as his height and weight, he seems very kind of lightweight, and that's probably why he's kind of more favoured to be more of that kind of Ozil playmaker style of player than someone who's going to be doing a lot more work physically. But I actually think, depending on the wing back you're playing against, if you're playing against quite a small wing back, then it won't really hurt him because his main job's just going to be to knock the ball forward and use his pace and get a ball into the box. Whilst if he's playing more central, he has to deal with bigger defensive midfielders and centre backs, which is why I've got him out on the left. Now we've got quite a lot of other players we can take a look at, but I'm going to try and keep these a little bit fast. So we've got Edmund Company, backup goalkeeper, decent player, obviously not as good as our main goalkeeper. We've got Kevin Chiembe, plays in Norway, I think, or Denmark, sorry, for Lyngby. Again, a very, very decent option for centre-back. 14 jumping reach, 13 strength. We might find that his kind of height and jumping advantage could be useful against teams that play with a target man style of striker. It's obviously just a shame that we can't scout which teams play with a target man style of striker. But then again, I mean, I guess one thing we can do, we can be a little bit intelligent about it. So if we take a look at this guy, Omar El-Sawi, 185 centimetres, 74 kilograms. Doesn't really seem that big. Whilst we've got Ahmed Said, 85 centimetres, 72 kg. So chances are one's probably a deep lying forward and the other's probably more of a poacher poacher. So, yeah, we probably don't need to worry too much about long balls in the air. That's an option we have with Chiembe, and we have another nice option with Kalala, who plays for Hobro in Denmark too. What I like about this guy is he's pretty good at the back. Again, very strong, decent jumping reach, but he can also play defensive midfield as a ball-winning midfielder. So when it kind of feels like we need someone who's a little bit more defensively sound as opposed to Rukitanga, or, you know, we're trying to hold on to a lead, Kalala's defensive attributes can always sub him on. We've got Joma Omar, regen, very, very good on paper, but for me, just maybe lacks some defensive attributes that I probably want from one of my fullbacks. But 14 pace, 12 acceleration, 12 corners, 15 free kick taking. Almost came very, very close to scoring a free kick against Kenya. So again, a good option to have on the bench. Can utilise his pace in later moments of games. Berili Lubala, pace, crossing, not quite as good as what we've already got. Warren Chimembe, this guy looks pretty decent, but I've not actually managed to try him yet because he is going through some injury issues. Ligue 2 player, so again, you can tell from his attributes he's pretty decent. Not quite as good as the ones I feel like we've got on the pitch, but Chimembe remains as an option for that kind of Kobo or Bangu replacement. Matondo, again, we have some decent playmaker style of players. It's just a shame they're quite lightweight, and really, to be honest, technically this guy's very good, but I want my midfielders to still have some weight about them, be able to throw themselves around a little bit. I feel like this kind of player, 169 centimetres, 68 centimetres, it's kind of the type of player you throw on when you need a goal, that kind of like playmaker with something, with a bit of something special. Antoine Makumbu, this guy looks pretty decent as well. He was injured, I think, so I couldn't actually test him out against Kenya. 12 dribbling, 12 acceleration, plays in midfield and can also play as an inside forward out on the left-hand side. His crossing ain't great, which probably explains why he's more central. But, yeah, again, it's still not quite as good as the central players we have. I feel like some of his mental attributes are a little bit off. Passing could be better. Marking could be better as well. Because, like I said, I want defensively sound central midfielders as well. Even the advanced playmakers got to be able to put a shift in. But, again, decent option on the bench. And that's what you need in international teams. Because a lot of the time, players will go away and get injured playing at club level. So it's very, very, very important that, you know, you have that depth. Faustin Makela plays for York. I mean, he's got pace on him and he can whip a ball in. Other than that, he's not really got much about him. But again, decent backup player in the squad. Brian Natambi plays for Marseille. One thing I like about this guy is he's not the fastest as opposed to like some of our other wingers, but he's got a bit of strength about him. He puts himself about a little bit. Decent crossing, decent dribbling, decent passing as well. And again, you know, they're just like the main attributes I'm looking for. And tactically, the way we're set up is to utilise these types of fast players that can whip a ball in. So, yeah, I mean, if I've got like a real fast player, and we've got a lot of them who are fast, but they can't whip a ball in, they're entirely useless to me, so they don't make the cut in the end. And one thing we really actually lack, I don't actually think we took a look at Jan Kitala, actually. That reminds me. Did we? No, we saw Albert, and then we went down to Edmund Company. So, Jan Kitala, surprise, surprise, is a winger, like most of these players seem to be, but he's actually playing up front for me. And the reason for that is I feel like he could potentially put a decent shift in as a deep lying forward. And obviously in this kind of approach, unless I go strikerless or something ridiculous like that, I kind of need a striker. It's just important that when we do whip the ball into the box, we kind of cater for him. And the fact that he's not going to be very good in the air. Even though at 12 jumping reach, it's maybe not too bad. But on paper, this guy is really more of a winger. So he is versatile, does give us an option. But what I liked about him was he's got 15 dribbling, 12 off the ball movement, and decent finishing and composure as well. And kind of plays for Lyon. So he's not a bad player. Deep lying forward, so he's going to drop into midfield a fair bit, kind of like Aguero-esque type of player, run at defenders, try and link up with the wide players. That's really what I wanted, because I am kind of expecting to see goals, not just from the wide players, but from these guys pushing up as well. So a deep lying forward, I wouldn't see him more as a striker, but see him more as a like all-round player, just leading the line and looking to really supplement the players around him more than just being a pure goal scorer, like someone like, I don't know, Hernandez style player, for example. Next up, Maxime Civis. Now, again, we really lack some decent strikers, and that's kind of affected how I've ended up approaching things tactically. But this guy is probably the best we could get in terms of needing a backup striker, right? Because if this guy gets injured, we kind of don't have anyone else who can play up front, bar Luca Bacchio. And like I said, I feel like if I move him out of midfield, the quality to actually get the ball to him ain't going to be good enough. But because he's got 15 jumping reach and 11 heading, if we ever need to go 4-4-2, he can also offer us that. So, yeah, that ain't too shabby. But again, most of our players are kind of like winger-style players. So, yeah, that's Maxime Civis in a nutshell. So, that's it. They're the better players at our disposal. So, in terms of our tactical approach, like I said, obviously, we're going to be playing more as a counter-attacking side. When I say counter-attacking side, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to be on the counter mentality all the time. In fact, like I said, with familiarity being so irrelevant, I'm just going to start every game on standard flexible and tweak that way based on how I see fit. And I feel like if you go into too much detail with international teams, especially at under 23 level, where mental attributes are pretty low, and start saying, oh, fluid, rigid, whatever, rigid, that's flash from the past, structured and whatever, it can get confusing. So, you know, I just want to, this is the basis for how we want to approach things. We've got Kalulu on the right-hand side, fullback on support. So in terms of him being a fullback on support with standard mentality, I mean, he will try and make runs forward, but you won't see him really. So say Luke Bacchio's in a position to cut inside, you won't see Kalulu on the overlap running like a madman as if he's running away from the cops or something, overlapping. He's just someone, he will step into midfield from time to time, pass it shorter, cross less often. He's not very good at crossing, and tackle harder. So that's it really. We're playing with a close down more team instruction, to try and apply pressure to a lot of sides, because we are pretty decent when it comes to being fast and physical and whatnot. So he'll step into midfield and just try and supplement the midfield. And Jate and Mambo, pretty bog standard central defenders. There's no point overcomplicating them. And Bola, the exact same thing. Sometimes we'll see Jomar Umar come into the mix, maybe off the bench, utilise his pace. And sometimes we'll feel like it could be helpful to have him overlap and still be told to obviously pass shorter, but then would need this guy to drop back in as a halfback to create a back three almost, so we don't get counter-attacked. So that's it. It's all about keeping our options open and just trying to create a system where we can try and get the best out of individual players, because it is more about getting the best you can out of individual players within the constraints of building a decent, well-balanced system than it is, you know, trying to build an epic attacking tactic and whatnot. So Rutikanga we've already discussed, more as a ball-winning midfielder against poor opposition. That way he can go missing, it's not the end of the world. Probably against better opposition, play more as a defensive midfielder or an anchor man, just try and keep him more static. And like I said, Kalala, especially for the more difficult opposition, can always come in as an option. So yeah, so far our kind of defensive half of the pitch, nothing out of the ordinary, just basically trying to keep things simple and trying not to ask players to do more than they're really capable of doing. In front of him, Bangu, I was kind of like, oh, you know, do I go for a Mezzala or a Carrilero or something like that? And I was just like, no, you know what? This guy's the best player in our side, plays for Fiorentina. We'll just set him as a box standard central midfielder. He'll hover in this area. He'll do what he does best. If we're on an attacking mentality, he'll get forward more. We'll utilise him more. I wanted to be really careful not to kind of ask him to go too attacking, because it is tempting when you have a player as good as this guy. 12 long shots, 14 passing. You think, oh, why wouldn't I want him to get involved more in the kind of final third? But with an advanced playmaker to his left, who's mainly going to be focused on trying to float around in this area to play balls forwards and is not going to do as much legwork naturally, obviously that leaves us very, very susceptible, open for the counter-attack. And that's what I mean when I'm saying just trying to build a system that's not reinventing the wheel, that is quite balanced. And obviously we won't actually know in reflection how well the players in the system will work together until we actually put it into practice, and we've not had friendlies and I can't schedule them. Advanced playmaker. Now, I'm not really keen on an advanced playmaker kind of playing this role, and I'm not really keen in playing an advanced playmaker just off the striker, because I don't feel like the advanced playmaker, even on support, really tracks back enough in Football Manager. But that's why I've gone with him here. He's deeper, he'll get involved a little bit more, be easier for the kind of poorer players and the fullbacks who are told to pass it shorter to give the ball to him, and then it's all up to him to kind of play that killer ball or give it to Bangu, who will also try and play more risky passes towards the front three. That's the name of the game really. Get it wide, utilise pace, and just, I don't know, do something in the final third. Leave it up to them really. Try not to reinvent the wheel, and for that reason I've told him to close down more and get further forward. That's why it ends up resembling more of a 4-2-3-1, but off the ball he does drop back a little bit deeper. And against a lot of under 23 sides, even though he's not very good defensively, just that extra body makes it harder for him to break you down. And I just felt like I had to go with an advanced playmaker, because like all our central players were kind of playmakers type of players, and if we end up subbing someone on who we feel like would do a little bit better in a different central midfielder role, then we'll do it. You know, it's not the end of the world, and we're going to be tweaking a lot anyways depending on opposition. So Sambi Lokongo, winger on the left hand side. Obviously knowing I wanted Luca Bacchio to be a inside forward on the right hand side. One of the main reasons for this is because Luca Bacchio, like I said, I don't want him playing up front on his own where he'll be far too isolated. Maybe against slow defences we can play him as an advanced forward on his own and just hoof the ball to him, and he can, you know, try and beat the offside trap or something. But most teams under 23 level in this continent will probably play relatively deep defensive lines against us anyways. And again, it depends on the opposition. We've got the winger on the left-hand side. Reason why he's on support is simply because, well, it's about aiming to find that balance, right? And with Kobo being on attack, kind of feels like him being on support kind of balances this side of the pitch out a little bit. If we feel like we're being done a little bit too much down this side, Bowler can always be changed to a defensive fullback. And the reason why I've told him to aim the cross far post is simply because if he tries to aim the cross towards a far post, chances are it's going to get somewhere closer to this guy than this guy, because we don't really want this guy getting in on the end of crosses. And Kitala as a deep line forward, it's kind of self-explanatory. Individually, I've told him to dribble more simply because he's got 15 dribbling, but his main job is really almost to play like an extra midfielder. Just didn't want to go strikerless, and he can't really play in the attacking central midfielder role, so it makes sense, just to try and link up with these guys. But yes, so I kind of went on for a bit saying that tactically we're not doing anything special, and I think that whole analysis still somehow managed to take about 15 minutes. So we played against the Kenyan under 23s, right? And this is what I mean about tweaking. So I'll take you through what I actually ended up doing. So they didn't really change things around tactically. They kept the 4-1-3-1-1 formation for some reason, and it was basically screaming out, you know, to take advantage of width and getting balls into the box. And to be frank, that's what we did. One thing we did going into the second half, because we were really kind of struggling to break them down. I mean, we had chances on goal, but it kind of needed a little bit more tweaking to get the best out of it, to get a little bit more infiltration. A lot of the time, Luca Bacchio would look to cut inside, but because of how crowded the middle of the park was, it wasn't really suiting him to try and cut inside. He was just getting tackled. So I moved Luca Bacchio over towards the left-hand side, played him as a winger there on his natural foot, utilised his pace a lot more, started getting more balls into the box, and I actually brought on another player at right mid. So this is a player that we brought on at right mid, and to be fair, he was actually very, very good. I think he may have grabbed a goal, I can't quite remember, but he's kind of injured, so he can't play against Egypt, which is a shame. He's got about 14 acceleration, 14 pace, and 14 crossing, and decent dribbling as well. Yeah, shame about him, but that's how we look to try and change that game up a little bit. Just try to, you know, get Luca Bacchio involved a little bit more, increased our width a little bit as well. Our fullbacks also became inverted fullbacks. Now, the reason why they became inverted fullbacks is because when they started getting involved a little bit more in the middle of the park, it actually helped us get Matondo and Bangu forward a little bit more. So they start getting, oops, for some reason I thought I could drag. They start getting involved a little bit more. We are no longer outnumbered in the middle of the park, and Matondo and Bangu can push on forwards. And the thing is, you might think, oh, well, you know what? Get these guys to cut inside and then get these guys to overlap. Well, that's obviously another option, but I'm looking at it from the perspective of how can I get the best out of my team? And the wingers that I've got out wide, they're the players that I want utilising all that space out wide. They're the players that I want taking them individual, unprotected fullbacks of Onwenga and Otieno by themselves. Knock the ball forward, use your pace and whip the ball in. Not my fullbacks who can barely cross a ball in. You know what I mean? And my fullbacks are a lot better at tackling as well. So you tell them to invert and get more involved in the middle of the park. You not only start to basically, well, you not only have a reply for them flooding the middle of the park, but they've got decent tackling at fullbacks and they're decent defensively, so they help you win the ball back too, and you can spring counter-attacks from it. So that was my logic really going into it, and we will take a look at the two goals. Like I said, it did take us until the second half after I made them changes to really break them down, but it was clear to see from the first half that we were quite clearly the better side. So there we go. Luca Bacchio was moved as a winger towards the left-hand side. He whipped the ball in. Kitala won the ball in the air, and it was Elia that fired home and did a bit of a backflip. Once again, it all came through Luca Bacchio, who whipped the ball in, and Kobo, who pushed forward from that attacking playmaker position in the middle of the park, and finished in the middle of the box, and that was it. We also changed to an attacking mentality in the second half, which definitely helped us, but that's it. We can't scout opposition. We don't know what mentality to start on, so we're just going to be conservative and tweak as the game goes along against Egypt. The same recipe really that gave us success against Kenya. Now, what might I change from this kind of scaffolding? Would probably go into the game keeping it the way it is. Or maybe changing Luke Bacchio to be a winger out on the left and maybe bring on one of the right wingers, because we want to try and utilise the space that the 3 centre-backs will leave. It's difficult to say right now, but the point is that we are going to be tweaking as we go along, making narrow tweaks pre-game and during the game. And I feel like once we actually no longer manage an under-23 side and we have scouts and whatnot, then all of this will become so much easier because we'll have intel on opposition teams beforehand. Now, that is going to be it for this video. I mean, apologies if you were expecting like some kind of ready-to-go tactic or anything like that. No. You know, we're playing Football Manager the way it's supposed to be played, as if we're a manager in real life. And hopefully a lot of what I said made sense, especially the tweaks that we did against Kenya. I was really surprised that their manager didn't change formation. I mean, I was surprised that he put so much emphasis on the middle of the park as well and left his fullbacks like so isolated out wide. I mean, with Congo, for God's sake, most of our strength is going to be using pace down the wings. And I'd be really surprised as well if Egypt play them attacking wingers against us with only 3 centre-backs. The only issue with that, though, is that when we do actually break through, crossing the ball in probably won't end well. So that's another problem that we don't have a transfer window with to solve, because it's international management. But I just really hope we don't lose against Egypt, because I'd probably get sacked if we end up losing. I've been in the job for like 3 games. But anyways, if you enjoyed the video, the next episode I promise will be the first leg of our under-23s game against Egypt. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, thanks for watching.